This video is brought to you by my new book, Guided Practice Routines for Guitar Intermediate Level. Grab a copy today and practice along with me in this intensive 10-week guitar course. Hi everybody, Levi Clay here, and I'm back again for another video where we are going to talk a little bit about ear training. And one of the harder things to practice when it comes to ear training. You have some really good students when it comes to ear training and transcription, all of these things. But the same problems do come up time and time again. And there's this thought that, well, if I work on my intervals long enough and be able to sing my intervals, if I can identify a chord when I hear it, I'll have good ears. And of course, there's a little bit more to it than that. So I had a really successful video a year or so back where I talked about the ear training skill that music schools don't teach you. And that was audiation. Audiation is the ability to hear an interval in your head, not to hear someone playing an interval and identify it, but for you to really, honestly be able to hear a strong melody or hear something in your head, because that's the skill that we're looking to develop. As players, we want to be able to hear things and then play them on our instrument, not need somebody to show us things and then us to play them on our instrument. And what I found with a lot of my students is the skill of audiation is patchy at best, depending on the student and what their background is. So what we're going to talk about today is audiating a solo. This is the most valuable tool that you can possibly have when it comes to developing your ear and developing yourself as a player on the instrument. I don't want to say my memory's great. I actually transcribe because my memory's not so great, but there are some things that are really ingrained in my memory, and I'm not actually even talking about music. There are scenes from films that are ingrained in my memory. There are jokes from sitcoms. They're ingrained in your memory, right? I'm sure you can all relate to this. And we have picked those things up by osmosis. If you took your favourite scene from a film, I don't know why I always come back to like one of the classic Samuel L. Jackson scenes in Pulp Fiction, but if you visualise Samuel L. Jackson in as Jules in Pulp Fiction, in one of his iconic scenes, you can probably picture him and hear the lines that he says. So if you wanted to repeat the scene, you would have a better ability to do that. Why? Not because you're reading it from a book, not because someone is cueing you, but because you can hear it, you can remember it. And we want to do the exact same thing when it comes to learning solos and understanding the music that we're listening to. So I remember Bruce Foreman, great teacher, talking about this with a student who wanted to learn, I think it was a Coltrane solo, and he said to the student, well, we're not going to learn to play it until you've learned to sing it. And as a guitar student or a music student, that might frustrate you. You're like, well, I want to get in, I want to get playing. But Bruce is absolutely right there. The value of learning the sound of something is so much more beneficial to you than just sitting down blind and working out how to play it. If you were to sit down with me for a lesson and I was like, right, I'm going to teach you this solo. It's one that I've been doing with my students on a song called WAP, not the WAP that you're thinking of. And it's hard for them to learn it, not because the solo is particularly hard. It's not all that technically challenging, but because they don't know it, right? They don't know the song. They don't know the solo. It's completely new to them. So we're learning to sing it. We're learning to hear the phrases and sing the phrases. Now, I'll give you some examples. When I think back to my early life of learning to play music, I was learning a lot from magazines. And I would be trying to learn songs that I actually didn't know. And of course, that's very, very hard to do because unless you can really read music properly, it's a real struggle. And you're kind of looking at a number on the page and you play the number and you're trying to think, does that sound right? And then you listen into a recording. It's really like it's a slow process. But now, if I think back to some iconic solos, like let's say one of Slash's solos on Sweet Child of Mine, it's much easier for me to play that solo now on my instrument, despite having not played it in years, because I can hear very clearly. Ba da 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 ba da ba da ba 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 da ba. Pitching's off, but that's not important, right? My rhythm was right, and the contour of the line was right, and I was doing that at this sort of speed. 2, 3, 4. Ba da da ba da da. But if I slowed that down. Ba da 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 ba da da. Ba-da. I won't do the whole thing. Right, you can tell that that's really ingrained in my head. I know what it sounds like. And then when playing it on my instrument, it's easy to replicate the sound that I'm hearing in my head because I've been playing my instrument for a very long time. So this is what we really want to do, internalize and memorize things, because it's a skill. It's a muscle that we have to work on, our musical memory, if you like. I had a video on the other day, and it was a harmonica player, and he was playing the solo to Freebird. And my partner came into the room and was like, oh, good for him. He's learned a few licks on the harmonica. And it was maybe 2 minutes into the solo, and I was like, no. And then I just started singing along with him because I knew what he was going to play. Why? Because I've internalized the sound of the solo to Freebird. So I'm going to encourage you today to go out and listen to some of your favourite solos, or maybe even don't listen to them. Could you sing back some of your favourite solos? If you think of the Stairway to Heaven solo or the Comfortably Numb solo, can you sing them back? If the answer to that is yes, then I want you to move on to a slightly more challenging thing. I want you to put on maybe the Spotify top 10 songs of the week, whatever it happens to be, and see how long it would take you to listen to them and memorize the melody to the chorus, right? Just being able to sing back the melody. That's probably not going to be too challenging. Then kick it up a gear. I want you to go and check out the solo from Miles Davis on the song So What. It's not a tricky solo, but the reality is it's probably quite different from a lot of the stuff that you are used to memorizing. And so the tools of memorization that you will need to use for it are going to need to be developed. And how are we going to do that? Repetition, repetition, repetition. You listen to it over and over and over again. You should listen to this video over and over and over again, because as Adam Neely always says, repetition legitimizes. I want you to listen to that solo over and over again. You will memorize it. I promise you, it's not going to be too tricky a solo. And then if you were to sit down and learn that solo, you'll find that it's much, much easier for you to play because you've really got that internal sound of it. And there might not be so then it goes up a sixth and then it goes up a tone. I don't think like that. I don't know a lot of people that think like that. But being able to really hear that melody very clearly in your mind is going to be very good for you. And then finally, if you can do the Miles Davis solo, then you can graduate onto WAP. So WAP is it's from the Jack McDuff album, The Honey Dripper, and the guitar solo on that is a Grant Green solo, and I've been talking about it with a fair few of my students just recently because I really like the solo. It's a great solo and a fun one to dig into. It's not all that technically challenging. It's a blues, but can you memorize it? It's a great question to ask yourself. If you can't memorize it, why? I'm having students that are struggling with this at the moment. Why can't I memorize this? It's a language that's different to you. But the more time you spend listening to a language, the easier it becomes to pick up details and memorize details. So it's going to be a wonderful, wonderful use of your time. Please do go and do some of that, because being able to listen to something and internalize it and then audiate it, hear that thing clearly in your head, is one of the most important skills that you could ever develop as a musician. Speaking of skills that you can develop as a musician, you knew it was coming. Please do go and check out my new book, Guided Practice Routines for Guitar Intermediate Level. This is my second book in my Guided Practice Routine series, where I am taking you to the next level. We are looking at slightly harder concepts, triad primers and seventh arpeggios and fourth, fifth, sixth and seventh intervals, some swing picking practice in there, some double stop 16th notes. I'm going to say it's a great book. My publisher told me it's a great book. I love it. I put a lot of work into this one. Fun fact, this was actually the first book that I wrote, but then my publisher said it's too hard. Why don't we do an easier one? So this was really the genesis of the idea of the Guided Practice Routines book. Go and check out a copy on Amazon, link in the description. Hope you have a great time with it. Any questions about this, please do let me know in that comments section below. Much love, and I will see you for another video soon. Goodbye.